Welcome into another not editions. We're going to do one edition of Pete's Pigskin Preview. I'm Neil McCready, joined by MPW digital football expert Pete DeWeese here on this. Pete, are you there?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I was making sure. You were being still, and I was like, oh, I hope he's not frozen. Okay, joined by Pete DeWeese. We're going to get you ready for Ole Miss, the fourth-ranked Rebels, entertaining Washington State, 11:45 a.m. a.m. Central Time. We were just talking about Maine, so I was thinking about Eastern Time because my brain's weird like that. 11:45 a.m. Central Daylight Time, to be specific. SEC Network. My good friend Taylor Zarzer and his crew on the call. The Rebels, about a 33-point favorite against the Cougars. Obviously, everybody knows what's next. It's at Georgia, at Oklahoma. The critical stretch in the Rebel season is a week away, but for now, we're going to focus on the Cougars. They're 3-2 on the season, in a tie with Oregon State for first place in the Pac-2. Those two teams will settle that later in the season when they play each other on a home and home. Bless their hearts. I mean, if you can't feel something for Washington State, you're just not a very empathetic human. So we'll touch on that in a minute. Pete, how are you?
I'm doing well. Glad to be back after a week off.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of. I enjoyed the week off. It's kind of. I got back and it took me a couple of days to sort of get acclimated to a completely different climate. That one that I've spent 50 something years living in, and then I spent 3 or 4 days in a different one, and I was like, man. But I'm back, and it's big stretch of football coming. I mean, look, Ole Miss is going to win on Saturday. They're going to get to 6-0, and then it's just going to get real, right? I mean, we're about to find out everything. I wrote this on Sunday, and as I wrote the line, I'm like, this is not profound, but you're right. We're going to find out if this team is a contender, a pretender, or somewhere in between. I mean, soon, and I think it's a contender, but we'll find out. But it won't be this week. The Rebels and the Cougars. This show, by the way, brought to you by our good friends at RiverLand Roofing. When it comes to durable, high-performance roofing, you know what? I'm going to skip this part. Here's what I can tell you about RiverLand. They came and did our house. We had hail damage back in the spring. For whatever reason, where I live in Oxford is like Tornado Alley. If there's a bad storm that goes through Oxford, it hits our neighborhood every freaking time. So there's something about the topography. It hits between our neighborhood and Abbeville every single time without fail. So if you ever hear tornado warning in Oxford, think of me because it's going to be our area north. I mean, no joke. Between here and north of Abbeville, sometimes all the way to Holly Springs, there's something about the way the land is set, I guess. I don't know. I'm not smart enough to tell you how this works. But here's what I can tell you. We had hail damage. We knew it because suddenly we kind of had a couple of leaks in the house. And so we called our insurance people like, hey, we really don't want to do a claim if it can be fixed. We were going to get someone to come out, and they were like, no, don't do that. Because once you do that, you get into some insurance weirdness. Let me send our roofing people, and they sent RiverLand out. And they flew a drone over the house. And it went all over and mapped the house and found the damage and looked at it and helped us with our insurance stuff. And sure enough, we had a claim. At that point, we filed the claim. At that point, you had to schedule the roofing because they come out and it's 24 hours of chaos at your house. But they're super professional. We have a pool sort of on the side back of our house. That's not a humble brag. The point of it is it's a liner pool, and so you don't want nails and stuff in the pool because that can mess up the liner, and liners are about $5,000 to replace. And so we were like, that was a concern. My wife, Laura, is big on landscaping and plants and stuff, and she's very proud of them, and they're basically her children, and they took great care to cover those and protect those because the guys get up on the roof at the beginning and they take these like metal pick things and they just start ripping your roof off.
Go to town.
Throwing it all over the place. And you're like, oh my God, what have we gotten ourselves into? But they were very careful to not mess up our plants and to protect the pool. And it was a day and a quarter of craziness. And then they came back through with all the metal detectors and they picked up the nails and stuff. They did phenomenal work. They did a beautiful job. Our roof looks great. They didn't destroy the yard. They communicated great. They'll do all of that for you too. It's riverlandroofing.com. I mean, sometimes I think that's just the best thing is to tell you that they do great work. I could tell you about all the stuff about GAF Master Elite. That doesn't mean anything to you. It doesn't mean anything to me, whatever. They told me, hey, we're going to give you the roof that's got the lifetime guarantee on it, where if you sell your home, it's going to have more value. And I was like, okay, well, that makes sense. But I didn't know what all the initials meant. You don't either. But what you do want to know is that if you live anywhere near North Mississippi and you have roofing needs, you need to get in touch with the people at RiverLand Roofing. RiverlandRoofing.com, 662-644-4297. There you go. I think that's just a better ad reader than reading the script. So,
listen, a legitimate testimony always means more to me than a simple commercial.
We're taping this on a Wednesday night. Pete just had to endure the ninth inning of the Cubs game with me. I don't know why I do this to myself. The Cubs are not winning the World Series. I know that. It's just putting off the inevitable. But tonight was a survive or die night, and they survived for another day. And so my brain's a little scrambled. So forgive me, I think Pete's just hanging in there. He's just laughing at me at this point. All right. So Washington State, Ole Miss. I got to share my screen with you in a minute. I don't even know where to start with the Rebels because they beat LSU. You sort of nailed that game. You didn't sort of nail it. You nailed it. You talked about how there was going to be opportunities in the middle of the field. There was going to be some things Ole Miss could do, and they did. I think you thought Ole Miss would win a close game, and it did. Frankly, it was like the last 4 or 5 Ole Miss LSU games where it was the fourth quarter game. It was really entertaining. If you're the guy in Dubuque, Iowa, who's watching the game and you don't give a damn who wins, LSU or Ole Miss, it's for you.
Still a great game.
Yeah. It's great TV. I mean, you're sitting there having a couple of pops and a bag of peanuts or something, and you're watching going, this is awesome. I'd love to go to one of these. And, it was great. Ole Miss wins. Rebels now 5-0, 3-0 in the SEC. And getting to the crunch time of the season, I'm curious what you kind of took away from that game, Pete, as we sort of move forward.
Yeah, I felt going into it. I mean, I there's no reason for anybody in the football world to distrust the Lane Kiffin and the Ole Miss offensive staff for having a plan. It's about being able to kind of, avoid or mitigate disaster and just take advantage of what's there. And for the most part, I mean, that's what Ole Miss was able to do. They, good quarterback play again, solid play up front. The skill positions we know at Ole Miss are very talented. They have some depth at certain positions right now. And you're seeing more and more guys kind of show up on the field and just names pop. All of a sudden, it's somebody made a play and you look up and it's a guy that you don't talk about a ton, but he just made a big play. And so in this day and era of college football, I think that's less and less common. But I think Ole Miss has done a good job of kind of aggregating some talent, particularly at the receiver position, but also at tight end.
Yep.
They've got you don't see a lot of Logan Diggs in the backfield, but Ole Miss has a 1-2 punch at tailback. And when he was in the game, he was effective both in pass protection, and then obviously he scored the go-ahead touchdown, which I'm sure felt good to him against a team that he used to play for. And so
I would think so.
So the ability to kind of avoid disaster. I mean, the one interception that got returned for, I don't remember if it was a big gain or a touchdown, that was clearly a defensive pass interference, like rightfully got called back. The other, kind of interception, Chambliss, Ole Miss found something in their study where they were willing to take shots at one particular guy and on one particular side of the field, and they did. and whether the game plan was we're going to throw kind of back shoulder balls and let it be contested because we know how handsy they are, but we also trust our ability to go up and get them. It worked because they challenged it 4 or 5 times down the right side of the Ole Miss offense. And, at one time it ended up, I believe, as a turnover. The rest of the time, they drew a couple flags. They had a couple big catches, and they moved the sticks at times when it mattered the most. They took advantage of the middle of the field. As good as those safeties are, schematically, we talked about it, on the show last time, is there was some space there. Ole Miss was not phenomenal running the football, but they've really done a good job of continuing to find ways to run the ball. And they don't abandon it when it's not working. It wasn't great early in the game, but late in the game, they found some really good runs to keep chains moving, and it wasn't all quarterback dependent, which is something that I do think is good to see. You can say what you want about LSU. The defense is extremely talented.
Very.
They are a good defense, and
that
Ole Miss found a way to kind of get them.
Is Halsey the safety?
Yeah, he's phenomenal,
dude. He's a stud. He's terrific.
He's a great player, and
you
Ole Miss found.
You don't have to be a football guy, and you could watch him go.
No, he's a big physical specimen that's going to play a lot of football on Sundays.
Yeah,
and Ole Miss found some ways to kind of put him in conflict, and which I thought was really good. And then Ole Miss they unveiled they rolled out a couple of new kind of wrinkles, some little things that I thought were very good, but it was clear that the game plan for this game was really dialed in. From Ole Miss defensive perspective, one of the things that I said on the show was I was curious, after the Arkansas game where Ole Miss had played so much man-to-man and kind of gotten themselves in trouble a little bit in the run game. Second half of that game, they went to more zone, kind of settled in, a little bit more base structure, played much better in the second half, and then they followed it up the next week with a lot of zone. They simplified again. It doesn't mean that they just went true soft and base, and they were still aggressive, and they picked their spots, but they played a lot of zone. And I said last week, I'm real curious to know if Pete Golding goes back to man-to-man, which is kind of where his heart is. I think it's where most of his career's been, or if he continues to play more zone and kind of mix and pick and choose his spots. And in this game, defensively, Ole Miss came out and they did. They mixed in their zone coverages. They played a lot of zone. They showed a lot of a too-high structure, meaning two safeties back, which means, they're giving LSU, they're daring LSU at times to run the football. They're telling you, you've got often 6 blockers. We've got 6 defenders. We don't think you're going to run the quarterback. And we believe that we can hold up enough until the rest of the secondary kind of rallies to the party in the run game. We don't think you're explosive, and we don't think that's what's going to beat us. I think that they knew that controlling the explosives on the perimeter was what was going to ultimately kind of corral the LSU offense, and that's what Ole Miss did. And it was a game plan that was executed really well. And I think are there still maybe some questions? Yes, I think there are. There's not a doubt in my mind. I think that Ole Miss, when they're playing at a high level, is one of the better football teams in the country.
Agreed.
But they're not at the level yet where they're just going to go out and slam the door on people early. Not with the teams they have left on their schedule.
I told Siski this too, and I think this applies to all of us who are old enough to have watched a lot of SEC football over the years. I think we're going to have to recalibrate how we look at teams in this era. I just don't think every team's going to have weak spots. The differences between great teams and good teams is smaller. The difference between a good team and an average team is smaller. Frankly, the difference between an average team and a slightly below average team is super small. I just think we have to recalibrate because
I feel like we went through an era for a long time where there was always a dominant team in the West and a dominant team in the East. And then there was a second tier that would compete, but whether it was Alabama in the West, Auburn had their years, right? Florida
LSU
for
had
a
that
long time in the East. So
team.
LSU had, right? We've always had a dominant team. And then that second tier team has been a threat, but realistically, unless the matchups were just right, you expected them to win every game except for maybe one and then walk into Atlanta and play in the SEC championship game. And I think that's different. I mean, I think that I think that the Georgia Alabama game was a great example of that.
Yep.
You know, because again, two really good football teams, and it's an Alabama team. People were ready to write off after week one.
Yeah.
Right.
And Georgia had chances that night, but they just couldn't kind of do it. But Georgia's not, and Georgia's really good, and we'll talk about Georgia next week. They're really good, but they don't have that in the same way Alabama doesn't, LSU doesn't. They don't have that. Hell, Ole Miss doesn't. Ole Miss had it a year ago. They don't have that dominant 6 to 8 man defensive line rotation that just takes stuff away from you. And then on the other side, like you look at Alabama, for example, one side of their offensive line is a weakness. Georgia doesn't have the great quarterback. I don't think he's a good player. He's a nice kid, all that stuff. But they just every team has issues, and Ole Miss has issues too. And I think there's a tendency. I'm not talking about you, but like me, and I think I'm kind of getting past it now to like look at Ole Miss and go, well, they might not be great at this, they might not be great at that. I don't know that they have to be, but like to your point. Like the margin, Ole Miss is about to go into this 2-game stretch. Someone asked me today, I was making a purchase, and the guy knew who I was, and he's like, what do you think about these next 2 weeks? And I said, I think everything's on the table from 2-0 to 0-2 to 1-1. I mean, it's all, nothing would surprise me. And I don't think that's the SEC that we kind of grew up with, right? Where
no, it's not, and it's I'll say this. I think now too, and maybe it is with a little bit just more kind of parity between rosters and that kind of closing of the gap in a lot of ways. At the high school football level and at the lower levels of NCAA football, where playoffs have been a thing, you've always wanted to be playing well in November in college football. That's nothing new. David Cutcliffe said it when I was at Ole Miss, is they always remember what you do in November, and it's cliche, but it's true.
Yeah.
But the reality of playoff football, whether it's at the high school level, the Division II level, whatever, and now we see it at the highest level of college football, you have to be a team that you can't start frozen, but you have to be a team that continually grows, and you have to be a team that doesn't hit a wall at the end of the season. And ultimately that's where you find success. And so I think right now with this team, especially on the defensive side of the ball, there has been a lot of growth. They had to replace so many guys, and there's been so much growth, and they found more of a home and an identity in who they are. And so the question is, can they continue to grow in that identity without having a major misstep?
And I think Taylor Green did
the right opponent.
I think Taylor Green did him a favor that night. He exposed some stuff in the first half, and frankly, most of that game that Ole Miss won against Arkansas, 41-35, I think. There's nothing better than being able to learn from a win. But there was a lot of film to go back and look at that night, and that they had a meeting on Sunday night where it's like, hey, we escaped, barely. There's no sense in denying what just happened. We gave up 530 some odd yards or whatever it was, 520 yards. Don't hold me to it. I don't remember. In that range of offense, gave up a lot of offense. Arkansas did a lot of things to them offensively that night. Mm-hmm. And I think they looked at that film, and ever since then, I think they've really grown from it. I think it forced them, to your point, to go, hey, we've got to fix some of these things. We've got to be more cognizant of doing our job. And then I also think, and I think you saw this a little bit Saturday, I think it forced Pete Golding and his staff to go, okay, this is not the same defense as a year ago.
Yep.
We can't ask guys to do things they can't do. So let's figure out what guys can do well, and let's put them in position to do the things that they can do well. And I think that's why you've seen them get away from some of the stuff that Pete would really love to do. Like, when he was at Bama, and even last year at Ole Miss when he had Trey Amos, you had Kool-Aid McKinstry and guys like that where you could just lock down a part of the field, and now you get to go play. Yeah. they have good corners. Like Antonio Kite's a good corner, but he's not a lockdown. Lock Chris Graves. Those guys, those are good corners, but they're not locked down SEC corners. And so you have to adjust what you've done. And I think they've done a really good job of that. To your point, like the one time Garrett Nussmeier tried to get out running, they had Sontaran Perkins there to make a stop and forced a punt. It was a big play in the game. And I think that's a credit to Golding, who I think this may be the part of the of being around Lane has rubbed off on him, which is, I think Lane's strength and his offensive staff, Charlie and all of those guys, Joe Judge, all those guys. I think their strength is the ability to look at the pieces that they have, look at the ingredients that they have. I don't know if you like Food Network shows.
Yeah.
I like Food Network shows a lot for some reason. I'm weird. Chopped. And you open your basket and you have peppermint and a steak and all this stuff. And what the hell am I going to, but you don't have time to go, well, I don't know what to do with this. No, those are the ingredients that you have. You have 30 minutes to make a dish. Go. And so they go sprinting to the spice cabinet and stuff. And I think that's kind of what Pete's done a little bit is he's opened his basket. His basket's not exactly the basket that he wants, but he's, all right, I'm going to make the best possible dish with this basket.
And he's done a really good job of that. He's done a really good job of finding production with a little bit of a different way than he's done in the past.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, look, for the paycheck and the price tag and for all of the accolades and regard that people have for him, that's what he should do.
Yeah.
But that's very much easier said than done.
But right? He opened up his basket hoping for filet mignon, and he kind of got like a swordfish or something. So he's having to adjust, and I think he's done a really good job of it. And I think that's what Lane's done his whole career.
No, he's done it, and he's taken. Look, there's still good players on the defense, and a lot of the, especially in the front, they're still young.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. And I know, I saw a post on the board last week is, our edge rushers have 1 sack on the season or something like that. That doesn't mean they're not being productive. The reality is he's rushing 3 a ton in the last 2 games, moving quarterbacks off the spot, forcing them to throw underneath. And the secondary and linebackers are doing such a great job of getting guys on the ground and forcing punts. That's the goal, period. Right? You go back to the LSU game last year, and in the fourth quarter of that game, Pete Golding's pressuring Nussmeier, and a healthy Nussmeier with that receiving core, they're making things happen down the field, and Ole Miss walks out of there with a loss when they probably should have won that football game.
Absolutely.
He, instead of banging his head against the wall, he's sitting there right now going, okay, my front is good enough to maybe not get home, but to move things.
Yeah.
And make it uncomfortable. And the rest of my guys are good enough right now and understanding what we're trying to do. We can get teams off the field. And at the end of the day, that's the name of the game in defensive football.
Yeah, and they've done a really good job both in the portal and in recruiting defensive linemen who can develop. They've
absolutely.
Randall Joyner's done a really good job, or whoever.
Great job.
I assume it's Randall with guys like Will Eccles.
Yep.
15. Jamarius Brown. I mean, they're getting guys that are clearly getting better. Deshaun Womack is who I was trying to think of. They're getting guys who are getting better, who are making plays, and they've put Perkins in a spot where I think he can be impactful. And obviously, opposing offensive coordinators make a lot of money, and they're smart too, and they're aware of where Perkins is, and so they're keying on him and trying to take him away. The other side. I mean, it sounds elementary, but I think sometimes you have to repeat it because a lot of times media, fans, everybody just focus on one side of the ball when you're watching a game. Well, the other side's trying too. And
absolutely,
they have a plan also. And, LSU was certainly aware of Sontaran Perkins. That was part of their plan. It was obvious that, hey, let's not let that guy beat us all night. And they forced other people to make plays, and they did. I thought it was a typical fascinating LSU Ole Miss football game. It was a lot of fun to watch.
Very good football game. It was.
All right, so Ole Miss, Washington State. I know you're going to look back a little bit at LSU on film and then look ahead to the Cougars. So take it away.
So I the Ole Miss LSU game has been talked about so much, and there were breakdowns, and there were national, media personalities and former NFL quarterbacks kind of breaking down and going over things, and there's been tons of articles and message board posts. So I didn't want to spend a ton of time on it. I wanted to show you just kind of really a couple of my favorite things from the Ole Miss offense, literally two things, and then a couple things from the defense as well in that game. This was one of my favorite things that Ole Miss did in the game. It's nothing new, it's nothing groundbreaking, but it was very well executed, and you can certainly see the role that it had and the effect that it had in the game. But it's also something now that you put on film that now the Georgias of the world and the Oklahomas of the world is something they have to have a plan for. So here, Ole Miss is going to get into their formation. This is, I believe, a 1st and 10, and they're going to fake their cadence. They're gonna clap, fake the cadence, and then the O-line is going to stay in their stance, and every skill player is going to look to the sideline. And the big key is nobody actually moves. Their feet don't move. Everybody stays settled, but their eyes go to the sidelines. When their eyes go to the sideline, the only player whose feet actually moved were the quarterbacks. Now you got the defense relaxed. You can see standing straight up, almost straight up. He's not in his pass rush stance. He's looking for a check. He's trying to get a signal. These guys are trying to all get coverage. Well, Chambliss is about to clap right now, and they're going to go from this kind of fake, we're looking at the sideline getting a call, and the play's already determined. But, those guys, people that grew up playing football, understand sometimes you go on one, sometimes you go on two, sometimes you go on first sound. They're essentially here going on dummy, right? They're going on freeze. That's what a lot of people call it when the offense turns and looks to the sideline to get a signal. But the one giveaway to me is right here. His eyes aren't to the sideline. He's watching the ball. He already knows the play because they're not actually changing the play, which is what a defense expects the offense to be doing in this scenario. So what happens? Everybody's in this relaxed state. Chambliss snaps the ball. The offense is off and running. The secondary is not set, and Ole Miss converts for an easy first down, pushing them across the 50. It's so simple. It's just that slight little bit of deception. And they did it to run a base play that they called 4 or 5 times throughout the course of the game. But just window dressing it with the snap count, with the fake look to the sideline, well executed just by the offense. I mean, the first time I remember it being a big deal was that LSU Alabama game in I think it's 19 when LSU with Joe Burrow, ran the gamut. I think LSU pulled it on Alabama for a big play in the game. But I think really just such a simple thing. It's on film now, and it's a way to negate that great secondary from LSU and just catch the whole defense now kind of slacking, and you can see it pops open so easily over the middle. Okay, and then this is the play that iced the game for the Ole Miss offense. It's a 4th down right here, and so concept-wise, it's a really simple concept. So they take the single receiver. It looks like they're going to put him on a post route. If they were to get some type of a cover 1 or a cover 3 where he's going to rotate and they get off coverage, that's a live throw for the quarterback. But realistically, in this situation, it's probably not what Ole Miss is anticipating. So they start Caden Lee out wide and motion him in to give the quarterback an indicator. Is it man? Is it zone? If it's man, the corner is going to come tight. If it's zone, he is more likely to kind of soft off a little bit, and you might even get more rotation from the safety. What they're going to get into is what is known as a drive concept, okay? Typically, a drive concept is going to be one of the outside receivers, most often the widest guy, is going to release underneath on a shallow route. The second guy is going to release either vertical or outside. If he's got a guy head up, he's going to release outside, and he's going to run a dig route. And he's going to look to settle in the window if he gets a zone coverage look. The third innermost man in the combo is going to go to the flat. So what you're trying to do is you're building a triangle with your concept. If it's man-to-man and the quarterback feels like somebody has outside leverage, the first read is typically going to be this shallow route. So you're trying to catch, in this case, Caden Lee coming across, trying to use the traffic created by the dig route to rub him off of anybody trying to trail him in man-to-man, and you're counting on his athleticism to outrun the linebackers. If the linebackers step up, then you're going to go behind them to the dig route for the easy completion. Here, when Chambliss sees the corner come down with Caden Lee and come tight and stay in this eyes kind of looks to be locked on position, right now he just knows if this guy chases this linebacker or this safety, whoever is responsible for the flat player has to run through traffic to get there. And on a 4th and 2.5 situation, that's a difficult thing to do. So as soon as it all declares right there, you can see they blitz what's known as the point man. That's this linebacker, that's Perkins here, who's down on the point guy in the little bunch set. As soon as he blitzes and the corner chases, he knows right now where to go with the football. That's kind of his hot route, his relief route. And so as soon as he gets that pressure, nobody there, easy throw and catch, and then great awareness and great decision by Wright to just take the seat and not force anything. Had the ball not been open there, had it not worked out the way that it did, you see Caden Lee fights underneath, puts his corner in a trail position. That ball could easily be completed to Caden. He's going to get tackled right at the sticks, but it's a first down. He has good awareness and knowing where the chains are and being there. Because the safety and linebacker sucked up, you also have the dig route coming open behind it now, also with the chance to convert the sticks. So universal concept. You see it all over the NFL and college football all the time. Great call, easy call. And Ole Miss or LSU in this game twice busted bunch routes. Caden Lee's touchdown in I don't remember if it was the third quarter or the first half where he just came wide open. Ole Miss started with 2x2, motion to a trips bunch, and nobody adjusted, and they ended up with just 2 defenders on 3 guys, and Caden was open immediately in the flat. So, I think they identified some things with the bunch sets that maybe LSU didn't handle well. Every time they used motion to get to it, not lining up in it. You line up in it, you give defenses a chance to communicate what they want to be in and try to get their kind of plan set before the snap by motioning to it. That added element of forcing communication always causes the potential to cause issues for a defense. So just 2 little things, obviously both, one major play in the game. The other one I thought was just a great little wrinkle that they put on film now for other teams moving forward in this season to have to deal with. Flipping over to the defensive side of the ball, this is the interception by Ole Miss. So, we talk again about Ole Miss getting into more of a zone presence, and they played a lot of the game with 2 high safeties. Now, what we've seen in the past from, these Pete Golding defenses is they may present this, and before the snap, one rocks down and one rocks back, and it ends up in some type of cover one or match principle. Here, they're willing to play 2 high. They're willing to play more zone. So you'll see as LSU uses motion and brings the receiver across, part of that, again, is to give the quarterback a man or zone indicator. He gets a zone indicator here. I'm going to kind of just let it play one time through. So as he motions across, it presents itself as man right here. But Ole Miss does such a good job of just understanding what their roles are. The motion is going to put them into a cover 3 variation. So this safety is going to come down, but he's not flying down. He's going to come down, and he's going to try to hold this, called a skiff player, seam, curl, flat. So he's going to try to hold the seam first so the quarterback can't just rip a ball down the seam. If there's somebody settling in the curl, he's there to play it, and he's going to rally late to the flat. So now the backside safety is going to end up middle of the field. Even though the corner to the field is shown press, he's starting to creep out of it, and he's now going to become an outside third player. So what happens here, as the motion happens, okay, Ole Miss does a really good job, and honestly, the linebacker almost overruns it, but they're going to pass this guy off as he goes underneath to try to occupy that safety. The motion guy, when he comes across, is going to try to release vertical down the seam. He's what you call an alert for the quarterback. If you get the right coverage, he's live. If you don't get the right coverage, if that safety stays deep, he's off the page. And what you're looking for at that point is going to be the dig or some type of a shallow, whether it's by the tight end or the running back leaking out. Okay. What Ole Miss does a good job of here is the guy comes across, that alert route in theory has a chance, but because the safety understands the down and distance situation and isn't too aggressive, he holds it. The corner squeezes the route. That takes Nussmeier off of it, and he loses sight of the safety that has come down underneath and really just serves him up a gift right there. You can see here, if Nussmeier wants to try to throw the seam, if he throws it inside, it has a chance, but this safety's depth has made him kind of think that he's probably going to carry him, and this underneath dig route is going to come open. He also may be slightly panicked by the rush, and we'll get to that in just a second. But you see the safety ends up right where he needs to be. It's a great job distribution-wise by the Ole Miss defense. You've got a corner ready to squeeze the seam route. You've got somebody underneath the dig. You've leveraged the flat player and the shallow route. There is nowhere effective to go with that football other than maybe throwing an inside post and hoping that you can get that ball into that window. But it's just a great job of understanding zone and responsibility by the Ole Miss defense. Okay, and you know, some people don't like, especially after last year, Ole Miss fans got so spoiled by the production of the front and getting quarterbacks on the ground. Ole Miss here, they end up rushing 3 players, and they don't get the quarterback on the ground, but there is enough chaos in front of him that even though the reality is he probably should have stepped up and tried to run it, in which case Perkins is waiting for him.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
There's enough chaos in front of him, and just enough that he doesn't feel like he can hold on to that ball long enough despite it being a 3-man rush. That is a kudos to all 3 levels of the defense. That is a kudos to the coaching staff as well. You know, we talked about this kind of being a great Ole Miss LSU game like it has been so often and comes down late these past few years. In those years, if you go back, you will never see LSU line up with 2 tight ends on the field and Ole Miss have 2 safeties deep. But you saw it in this game. It is a combination of trust in his front 6, but also just a belief that they didn't think LSU was going to be patient enough or explosive enough in the run game. And so here they come out, they try to run it. Ole Miss starts with this 2 high safety structure. Both safeties come down into the box. That is a 1st and 10 against what should be a numbers advantage box for the LSU offense. And it turns into, I believe, a 1-yard gain at the end of the day. And that is a great job with that front, controlling the line of scrimmage. And when you watch it from the end zone, you really get a feel for what's happening. You know, Ole Miss, they kind of check late, but watch what starts as a head up and kind of shifts to an outside shade. Watch the defensive tackle as the offensive tackle tries to scoop up and the guard tries to climb. Watch the absolute controlling of the line of scrimmage right there. That is a phenomenal job to press that back into the line and absolutely close the hole. At the same time, you watch on the outside, Harris is fighting out as he gets based as the ball is handed inside. He's going to come off and loop inside. Great job and awareness right there by Franklin. Ends up, despite being held, honestly, ends up right where he's supposed to be. And that's just dominance at the line of scrimmage and a phenomenal job up front in the development of those guys. And what may be perceived by the average fan as a lack of production is really impressive play at times by those front 3. If you count Perkins, you get the 4th. One thing we talked about in the preview last time was how LSU finds so many explosives by throwing the ball out on the perimeter, whether they do it to a wide receiver or do it to the tailback. Everything we talked about on the last preview show, they tried to do. And for the most part, I thought that Ole Miss did a phenomenal job. Now, there's one that the kid stepped out of bounds. It could have been a big play, but also it ended up being called back for holding. But I really think that the understanding of leverage and assignment and doing it from this zone structure that they're playing so much more of has been so impressive. So right here, Ole Miss is playing a zone, and LSU is going to have a run action with the bubble screen to the number 3 receiver. This is your flat player. He is currently inside leverage of the guy that's responsible for blocking him. When he sees this negative route and this bubble by the number 3, he knows, oh crap, I have to not only fight over the top, but he knows all of his help is back inside. So he knows I have to fight over the top. I have to turn it back to all of my help. And it's a great job just understanding leverage right there. And you can see, I mean, that's a tight end he's matched up with right there. And he absolutely controls him at the line of scrimmage. He gets his head outside. If the ball does go outside, you've got the late response here. They are spoking to the football to limit the gain. Ideally, you'd probably like to see his head just a little bit more outside to force it back in, but that's a phenomenal job of being aggressive and really a hell of a football play. And this was not the only time in the game you saw him or other members of this Ole Miss defense do a great job leveraging the football and understanding where they needed to fit to allow the rest of the defense to work. And that's such an underrated thing of playing great defense. And right now, Ole Miss is really starting to turn the page and get better and better at that. And by the time they hit Oklahoma and Georgia, they really are going to need to be dialed in on those perimeter leverage and those things to continue to kind of win big ball games. So I'm just going to skip right to it, and we're going to go right to Washington State. And listen, I don't have coach's film. We're kind of having to use some TV copy here, but I've got some clips from both sides of the ball from them. And Neil, we've talked about it a little bit off there, and you hit on it a little bit earlier. You're talking about a staff and a roster. The staff is entirely new. The roster has 67 new players.
It's basically the old South Dakota State staff.
Well, it is. And the best thing that I think I can equate it to, and this kind of hit me earlier when I was preparing for this, for Ole Miss fans and SEC fans in general, this is, ironically, I guess, this is kind of like Mississippi State going from Mike Leach and then replacing him with Arnett.
Oh.
Because it was a completely different style, right? And so you have a team that went from an Mike Leach air raid to an Arbuckle or whatever, still air raid-esque run and shoot type system. Now you've got a South Dakota State staff that has gone from a 4-2-5 to more of a true 4-3 structure. That is a shift. It's not a major overhaul, but it is a shift from a roster building standpoint. But you've got a team that's gone from an air raid to a team that now they want to play with 2 tight ends a lot. And they want to run the football and use the quarterback and be physical. And so not only is it a change in staff and a change in bodies, it's a change in identity. And in some ways, at some programs, money allows you to overhaul a roster and change the fabric and culture of a program and a system quickly. Outside of those major programs that have that ability, it's still a very difficult thing to do. And that's certainly some of what Washington State is facing. There are things that, they have good players on their roster. There are things that they do, particular players especially do fairly well. I guess I'm going to actually kind of reverse my course here, and I'm going to start with the Washington State offense because it is such a drastic change from what they have been. They're going to force Ole Miss to kind of do some different things and play some looks that are a little bit different. So this first clip right here, one thing you're going to see out of them is you're going to see some unbalanced looks. There is nobody to one side of the field, and to the bottom, you have 2 receivers on the outside that are both on the line of scrimmage, making the second guy ineligible, and then you have a third guy that is still eligible. So as a defense, you have a choice to make. If you put 2 defenders out here, they're probably going to throw some type of a screen or RPO on the perimeter. If you put three guys out here, it does allow you to be a little bit more sound or a little bit less sound to the box. Here, Washington chooses to go man to man against it so that they can keep numbers in the box because ultimately they believe that Washington State wants to run the football. And even though their quarterback is not the most athletic player in their scheme, he is not a Chambliss, he is not a dart. They're willing to run him. So they're going to now motion out to try to force the hand of the defense, remove another player from the run box, and then they're going to go with quarterback run back to the inside. There are a lot of similarities, I actually think, between this offense and the offense that Oklahoma brought to Oxford last year. Heavily based in quarterback run game, and there's some similarities in the schemes I'm seeing here and what we were seeing from that Oklahoma offense last year. And it was an Oklahoma offense that at times gave Ole Miss some fits early in that game with and was able to find production, not with the same level of players that Washington State has. And that's not to be a knock on these players, but they're not the same kids Oklahoma was fielding that day. But you're going to see them play with 1 and 2 tight ends. You're going to see them be willing to use the quarterback as a runner, and they're going to do a lot of different things to try to gain an advantage. So this is essentially the same type of set, but now this is another tight end. So instead of motioning the tailback out now to gain an advantage in the box and let the quarterback run the ball, they're going to motion the second tight end into the game, and now they can still have the read element with the quarterback. They can still just hand it to the tailback, but now they're going to try to change the math by adding a second player instead of removing a fourth player. So here they're going to add that tight end to the box, and they're going to insert. For an Ole Miss defense that likes to play with 3 safeties on the field, when they go into these 2 tight end sets, how comfortable is Ole Miss going to be staying with 2 linebackers, 3 safeties? How, is Ole Miss going to feel the need to add an additional linebacker or even defensive lineman to the field to kind of combat some of these heavier structures? Here's another example of an unbalanced look. Now, instead of the second tight end starting out wide and motioning in, they have 2 guys on either side of the quarterback, plus they have the tailback behind him in the pistol. They are going to force you to increase numbers to the overload side, which oftentimes is going to invite them to operate back into the boundary, and that's exactly what they do here. They're going to give the quarterback a read element right here where he's reading the end with a chance to make an easy throw and catch out into the flat. Quarterback, they are not an explosive offense on film, but I do actually like their quarterback. I find him very efficient. I found some articles from last year. I believe he was on the roster last year. I believe he was the backup last year.
Yeah.
I found an article from last year that talked about, he and Mateer really being neck and neck throughout a lot of the preseason because Mateer was explosive but also risky at times, where this kid was consistent and was going to run the offense. And you see some of that. He has the ability to throw the football when they give him time. He's not great in the run game, but he doesn't make poor decisions either. Now, they've turned the ball over a ton, and he has forced some interceptions. So I'm not saying he's a flawless decision maker, but he typically does a really good job, in particular with the underneath stuff. So I think you'll see a lot of underneath passing game. You'll see a lot of things like this that give them a chance to try and get yards on the perimeter with different guys in their scheme. Okay. Just here's another, again, example of them giving him an option to attack the flats. They're going to show, so it's another unbalanced set. They actually have a tight end here, and he's covered up by an outside receiver. There's no eligible receiver backside other than this guy. He's going to go in motion to fake the jet sweep. And what they're going to do is they're going to take this tailback and run him vertical. And then they're going to bring this guy, this tight end, back into the flat. So as the quarterback pulls the jet sweep, he has a vertical option and an underneath option, with the third option being to run the football right here. Okay. It's a nice design. If you're playing man to man, it can give you a ton of problems. Zone is probably a little bit of a safer answer. You can see right here what happens is they are playing man to man, and he just runs himself out of bounds. As soon as the quarterback sees the corner at the bottom chase, now it's okay. Who's going to peel with my tailback? In this case, it's this guy right here. That means that one of these guys is now responsible for my tight end, and I'm asking him to kind of run through some traffic to get there. He ends up wide open. Really should have been a bigger play, and the kid just kind of didn't tempo himself and throttled down before he ran himself out of bounds. So you're going to see some clever design things like this from this Washington State offense. This is a nice design still coming from the Apple Cup. So here they actually have 4 guys on the left side. 3 is normal. 4 you don't see a ton. So you've got, well, it's really guard, tackle, tight end that's covered up and ineligible, plus another tight end. Or here, what they've actually done is gone unbalanced. Tight end here, wide receiver off the ball. So that's 2 eligible guys on the right, guard, center, guard, tackle, tackle, tight end. So it's a 4-man surface. You have to kick the defense that way with your front to account for every gap. But on the backside, you also have to have at least 2 guys to be responsible for the 2 eligible defenders. They're now going to motion this receiver in. Okay. What they're going to do is he's going to have a little run RPO action here where this tight end is going to release to the flat and he is going to insert and block. If this guy steps down to insert and block, then your tight end is probably open on the perimeter. If this guy expands, then it's probably going to be a handoff. Here you can see what happens. They stay in the man-to-man. They don't pass it off. Very similar to how LSU botched the last 4th down call by Ole Miss a couple weeks ago. They kind of get dialed in. They don't pass things off. And there ends up the easy throw and catch. So a lot of manipulation with very simple stuff from a formation standpoint to try and create easy reads and mismatches. Again, I don't think the quarterback's a bad player. When they give him time, he can be effective. This is just a real simple Y cross concept. They use motion to get to it versus man-to-man. And I think the quarterback does a great job here. He's not panicked. He's got pressure free in his face. They are not great in protection, but he stands in there, puts the ball on the money, and they convert for the first down right there. So this is far from being an incompetent offense with an incompetent staff. They actually don't have a ton of experience at the play caller position. He's been a co-OC that wasn't a primary play caller. He's been a longtime assistant. He has been a primary play caller, I think, for 1 full season of football. But they do some really good things to try and create mismatches and to create problems for the offense. Defensively, it's a defense that looked really good until they played Washington and North Texas. And in both of those games, in particular the North Texas game, it's hard to hang the defense out to dry entirely because I think the offense turned the ball over 5 or 6 times, right?
Hard to win like that, yeah, for sure.
It's hard to win like that, and it's damn hard to play good defense when your offense is turning it over 5 or 6 times. So, but in this game, they certainly got exposed a little bit, and you know, from a matchup standpoint, Ole Miss has to feel good. Now, look, Washington's a really good offense. They've done a great job by design. You know, and traditionally it's a staff that does a really good job on offense. But I thought that, you know, one thing, so they're going to base out of a 4-3, but it's not your daddy's 4-3. They're going to substitute a nickel and play a good bit, and I would expect them to against Ole Miss. They're going to walk and expand backers out to try to control things. They're going to show 2 high safeties a ton, whether they stay there or not. Here in this particular clip, what you actually have, if I were to go all the way back, and I can't rewind it like I can normal film, this is actually a linebacker. And then you have, I believe, corner, safety, corner. And then these are your other 2 linebackers. So they may be a 4-3, but it's not stagnant. It's still multiple. They find ways to get to different coverage, to do some different things. But I think that Ole Miss is going to be able to take advantage on the outside and on the safeties. Here's just a good example of play action. They end up with a nice double move right there to one of their outside receivers. And this is an incomplete pass, but it is the type of matchup that if Ole Miss chooses to take advantage of in the game, the opportunity exists to do it. If they want to keep their safeties deep, Ole Miss has answers in there underneath in the way that they typically use their crossers. But I anticipate often and early Ole Miss getting their outside guys singled up with some deep balls down the middle to try and take advantage of aggressive safeties in play action and really kind of create those one-on-one matchups. Here, from a pre-snap box scenario, this says run. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 defenders, 6 guys to block, right? The picture is going to change. Whether he's coming or he's going to come down, but the box count, if they're going to get this type of look, Ole Miss has to be able to really effectively run the football. If they want to start adding guys, Ole Miss has to do a great job taking the RPO, which they have traditionally done a really good job of this year. You can see here, Washington hands this ball off. It is 100% good decision right there. And the reality is, if it's any better blocked by the right tackle right there, you're one-on-one with the safety. It's a chance for a big play, and he just misses it. One thing I will say about this Washington State defense is because they're not great, but they are really aggressive up front. They move the line of scrimmage, they slant, they stunt, and those guys up on the front are very aggressive in their style of play. That does one of two things. It creates problems for the offense, or they run themselves out of space and out of gaps and creates creases for the offense. And so you're hoping, if you're Ole Miss, obviously, that they will run themselves out of gaps and you will create space and creases for your offense to operate. This next one right here, okay, they do not, they don't always do a great job handling double moves in the secondary. They play with some confidence. They want to be aggressive, and this is just a great shot of another kind of double move play, just a basic concept. Ole Miss loves double move plays. This is one here. This is the best receiver on Washington's roster. He's a Sunday kind of guy. They just show this little curl and go. Quarterback with good timing. I do think there's plenty of opportunity, whether it's off a double move or just off of utilizing these type of bunch sets to try to get them into some uncomfortable windows. There's so much space there to attack, and Ole Miss has shown the ability to do that this year. One thing that has given them problems, and if Trinidad Chambliss is going to roll out there as a starting quarterback for Ole Miss on Saturday, they have not always done a great job with quarterback run.
Yeah.
It's given them problems. And so if I'm Ole Miss, I'm going to run my quarterback. I'm going to do what I do, but I'm also going to be conscious if I don't have to do that to beat this football team, It's probably not going to be where I start my game plan. But when they need it, again, we talk about how this defense will slant themselves into trouble. And what you're going to see right here is a slant here by the end, expecting this outside linebacker to now be responsible for C gap without a blitz. So what happens here when they run zone read and the quarterback for Washington pulls the ball, the athleticism takes over, and Washington State just doesn't have the skill in that second and third level of their defense to match up with the lead athletes right now, and that's the result you see. So, I do expect when Ole Miss, hell, it may be 40% of the game plan. Who knows? Personally, I would think they don't want it to be if it doesn't have to be.
Probably not.
Right? But when they need it, quarterback run game can certainly be an effective part of the system for Ole Miss. It has been all season. It won't be any different. Here's just another example again. Problems with quarterback run game. They're going to put trips to the field. They're going to try to expand the defense that direction, and they're going to come back with a little quarterback sweep the opposite direction. Well executed by the offense. Breaks free for an easy touchdown run. So when Ole Miss needs it, it's there. Washington State has clearly struggled with it in multiple games this season. And this is really the last one that I'm going to show you. You know, we talked last week going into that LSU game how LSU, they get you in 3rd and long. They were going to show you a pressure look, but they ended up a lot of times in just a Tampa 2. Ole Miss had a plan for it. This defense seems to want to be more aggressive on 3rd down. They are willing to throw numbers at the box, have a little bit more risk on the back end. Be curious to see if that continues to hold up. Right here, this is a 3rd and 9. They bring a pressure right here, and they are able to get home. They actually are going to spy with their best pass rusher, but they're going to go ahead and send 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and this spy is going to try to engage that tackle. So now if you're able to do that, you've got 5 on 5 with this guy just wasting space right there. If the running back gets out and is out of protection and not part of the protection, it ends up being a 5 on 4. And right here, the twist that they use is a really nice twist. They're able to get home. So, you know, Ole Miss has been pretty good in pass pro the last couple of weeks. They're going to have to continue to be on 3rd and long right here because they do have some good pressures that they can dial up. And I do think when they choose to bring pressure, they are good at attacking protections and kind of having an understanding of what they're going to get.
That's not a film that running back's going to want.
No, it is not. No.
He got
that
lost
one was
in
not
the
fun
crash.
on Monday.
Yeah, that was not a fun play for him. I mean, this is a game Ole Miss. I did a Q&A with one of the Washington State writers, and he was like, is there a scenario where Ole Miss loses? And I was like, I mean, it's 7 turnovers. It's crazy. I mean, it's a game they win. If you're betting the game, this is the part that I'll ask you as a coach. When you know what's coming up in the next, by the time you get to Saturday, 14 days, are you aware of that with getting players off the field with risk and stuff, or do you still want to keep doing your thing? I mean, how does that work?
I mean, I think they're probably right now at this point more worried about do our guys show up focused, right? We've heard Lane talk about it so much since the LSU game. That's kind of focus one. We said earlier, you know, the goal is to continue to kind of build and build and build and be playing great football later. Well, there's a balance of not giving my guys enough work, especially coming out of a bye week, and a balance of getting my guys injured. That's kind of hard to measure. You know, I don't see them just pulling guys to pull guys. Rotating guys, yes. Pulling is a different story, right? If the game gets out of hand early, you know, then it becomes, you know, first of all, it's just Chambliss start. And if he does. Do you roll Simmons out there just to hand it off and make a couple easy throws? Probably not, right? So does that mean you leave Chambliss in there, or do you bring in Maddox or whoever the third team? Like, you know, those are the what ifs when you're roster management that becomes so difficult. I think at that level, I think you'll see multiple running backs play, but it's also one of those things, right? Is you got to keep your kids happy to some degree, and so if you're sitting there in the third quarter and you've got a tailback that you're trying to see chase 1,000 yards and you're trying to see stay atop of some rushing leaderboards in the conference. And maybe just for whatever reason, they've thrown the RPO or he hadn't had a game. You might leave him in there to see him get those numbers to, you know, or has he already carried it 15 times and I don't want to give him many more. I want to keep the treads fresh for the next game. And so, yeah, it's a balance. You know, one thing I will say about Kiffin, and what I see as I watch them is in these games, he is going to be aggressive. He is not going to necessarily he's not going to come into it and play a game safe. Mm-hmm. He's going to be aggressive. He's going to try to run the offense. He's going to put things on film to make Oklahoma and Georgia prepare for them. And then at some point, depending upon how the game is going, he's going to eventually make that decision. But going into it, it's going to be focused on execution, trying to be explosive, trying to put it to bed early, I think. but he's, in my opinion, never been one to quickly kind of call the dogs off and save games.
No, I agree. I think it's one of the reasons I always kind of pick them to cover in games like this. They kind of keep going until it's time to stop going. And he's such a competitive guy that I think his kill switch is a little later than other people's.
Agreed.
All right, again, Ole Miss, Washington State, 11:45, Vaught-Hemingway Stadium, games on SEC Network. We already know the time for next week. It's Ole Miss at Georgia, the Dogs at Auburn this weekend. It's a night game at Jordan-Hare. And then it's a mid-afternoon game, 3:30 Eastern, 2:30 Central from Sanford Stadium there in Athens. Georgia looking to extract a little revenge for what happened last year in Oxford. The Rebels looking to make another major national statement next Saturday at Georgia. So that game's 3:30, 2:30. We will have a preview of that next week on Pete's Pigskin Preview presented by RiverLand Roofing. We'll get you ready for the Rebels and the Bulldogs from Athens. So until then, for Pete, I'm Neil. Take care.